Hey all, Rick here. I thought it would be a nice idea to look into just what the Dominion has been up to in the 25th century in the post-war era, after looking so much into Starfleet and the Federation's status. The Dominion is an old organisation, far eclipsing Starfleet in its age, with recorded lines citing both 10,000 and 2,000 years as to how long it's been around. To rationalise this, it's often interpreted that the Dominion began to be formed around 10,000 years ago, but emerged into the familiar state it is now at around 2000. Its origin was from that of the changeling species, who are biologically immortal as far as we know. For example, Odo drifted for centuries before being discovered and was not expected to return to the Founders for another 300 years, and still considered young. Like many other long-lived powers and empires in Star Trek, this means that their progress was rather slow-paced yet unrelenting, like the Voth. Any change to them would be slow, and considering the Founders' proclivity for isolation and xenophobia, for 2,000 years the Dominion was powerful but seemingly stagnant in how it operated. Well, in truth, stagnation is not quite accurate. It's just that the Dominion's view of the galaxy was for the long term, looking at life over the next 1,000 years, not the immediate future, and not the day-to-day lives of its subjects. Leading to the close of the Dominion War, the crippling of the Founders from the morphogenic virus created by Section 31 threatened to wipe out the Great Link. Seeing no immediate cure, they effectively went hell-bent into extermination against the UFP and would have continued on to their inevitable bitter end, if not for the heroics of the DS9 crew, even when it became clear that they were on the back foot and retreated into Cardassian space. The reveal of a cure for their terminal condition was the only factor that restored some glimmer of hope to the Founders, leading to the cessation of hostilities, on the additional condition that Odo also permanently returned to the link. On the Allied side, the female Founder agreed to turn herself over to Starfleet custody as a war criminal. While this seems like an ideal win for the Alpha Quadrant Alliance, it also reveals a lot about the Dominion and is in keeping with their ethos. As soon as a cure was offered, the changelings were willing to step back, abandon any gains in the Alpha and Beta Quadrants, and return home, while allowing the Federation to continue its exploration of the Gamma Quadrant. But they would survive, with their power structure in the Gamma pretty much untouched. And over the next centuries, who's to say what happens? The female shapeshifter's incarceration, however, is a bigger blow, as the loneliness of being separated from the Great Link is going to torment her for a long while. However, as near immortal beings, it could be argued that she was simply prepared to wait it out, until she invariably returned under some treaty or exchange in the future. It's my belief that the moment of the Dominion's surrender, the plan was simply to look out for the changelings first and foremost. After all, it was the very reason for the Dominion's existence in the first place. The reconnection of Odo to the link was not only to disseminate the cure, but also to finally return one of their wayward children, among the highest priorities for the Founders. But it was this choice that truly ended the Dominion as we know it. When Odo returned, he spread not only his cure, but, in the state of the link, a drop becomes the ocean, and his lifetime of experiences of living among, joking with, helping, protecting, and loving the solids was there for all to read. By returning Odo to the link, the very DNA of the Dominion was rewritten with a new perspective. A drop of compassion was added back into it, and this would have fundamentally altered them. We know that not all accepted the change, however. When existing apart from the Great Link, a changeling is more of an individual, and it's probable that some simply found themselves uncaring of the experiences Odo brought them. On top of this, Odo was only one life, and a young one at that, when combined with the millennia of lived experiences of the rest of the Great Link. However, it did cause some reflection among them. What truly was the best course for the Dominion going forwards? And was their imposed order actually good for anyone but themselves? After all, look at what it had invited. Then came the Renegades. The Renegade changelings might be considered an impossibility originally, as every changeling in the link is considered a connected existence, and therefore most align in thought. However, the would-be renegades were those who had been captured by Starfleet before finding their ways to the labs of Section 31 and were experimented on and tortured under Project Proteus. This drove them to become unstable, and also alter their morphogenic matrix to be less fluid and more meaty, let's say. They could better emulate solids and retain their form even in death, at the expense of the wider skill set of their shape-shifting abilities, experiencing chronic pain and effectively becoming more humanoid in thought and function. This meant that they could even be read by psychics to a higher degree than unaltered changelings and could suffer harm in their solid forms. It also meant that they could not rejoin the link properly, as any who linked with them would inherit the modified changeling abilities. In this way, the escaped renegades made it back to the Dominion and joined with some like-minded drops from the Great Link, who agreed to leave the Dominion and conduct their own vendetta against Starfleet. It was the leaving of these changelings to join Vadic and her team that Odo warned Captain Worf about as part of his contact with Starfleet, and frankly, to disassociate the Greater Dominion from their actions to come. At the turn of the 25th century, we have a Dominion which has been heavily affected by Odo's return, so much so that a small schism has formed. Yet even in this schism, the changelings' desire and ultimate goal of protecting their existence holds, as even the renegades move away from the Dominion's power structure and seek allies elsewhere, rather than bring potential further harm to the Great Link as a whole by returning properly. The peace treaty between the Dominion and the Federation seems a high priority for both sides. Meanwhile, within the Great Link itself and the heart of the Dominion hierarchy, we don't have a total explanation of what is going on in canon yet, but we can see some signs of change in the far, far future. For example, by the 32nd century, we have seen changelings existing beyond the link resorting to petty crime, suggesting that not all is well within the Dominion, if it even exists anymore. We also see a Jem'Hadar hybrid that implies that the genetic dependency that the clone species had on the founders and factories is also gone. The Jem'Hadar seem free to procreate on their own terms, potentially developing into a distinct and free culture, apart from the Dominion. In Apocrypha, however, we do hear some tales. Some subjugated powers in the Gamma Quadrant were inspired by the Dominion's defeat and chose this time to rebel. However, the Dominion was far from powerless and quashed these rather soundly. In the first Splinter timeline, the Dominion basically goes closed borders to deal with its own political turmoil, including putting down rebellions and restoring its hold for the foreseeable future. While in Star Trek Online, a bit of a difference emerges. In this timeline, Odo is kept at arm's length even within the link, and many plans are kept from him. He is appointed the head of a task force that will operate in an alliance with the Alpha and Beta Quadrants, but partially as a way to keep him busy and out of the day-to-day operations of the Gamma Quadrant. In all these instances, however, Odo is a consistent pushing factor for cooperation over Dominion, and the idea that the totalitarian regime of the Founders needs to change. Compassion for those beyond their own kind is necessary for a permanent peace, as doing otherwise breeds resentment, and as the Dominion War has shown, even being the strongest power cannot save you against every tactic. The Dominion wanted to control everything because what you can control cannot harm you. But the honest truth is absolute control is an illusion, one that Odo saw through from his perspective outside of the Founders' Empire and learned from his life experiences. However, the monolithic organisation cannot change overnight. Odo's push for reason and reformation within the Dominion is blocked by practicality. Initial rebellions still posed a threat to the organisation, and a total change in tune overnight would only spell chaos for the Dominion's partners, so any moral change to the Gamma Quadrant's largest power would have to be slow, and for a long time Odo would likely have to meet change halfway. The organisation has the skill set and power to impose its will, but it has to be far more careful in how it is applied than idealism would allow if permanent change is to take root. And this is the state of the Dominion as we know it in the 25th century. It is still one of, if not the largest, galactic superpower in the Milky Way, but it has seen the recent return of its conscience, if you will. A fresh perspective that saw life beyond its own interests and realised that perhaps its long-term survival rests in not tightening its grip, nor releasing it altogether, but perhaps letting slack the reins somewhat. It's ironic that for such a mutable species, true change will take time, even if they heed Odo's guidance. Too fast an approach and you'll end up with the fate of the Terran Empire, where the enemies their own malevolence had bred immediately seized power in their place as their grip waned. It's a delicate balance that Odo is going to have to walk, and I hope one day we revisit the Gamma Quadrant and learn just how it changed from his return. Thanks for watching this breakdown on the state of the 25th century Dominion. There is more I could draw on, but this is more of a broad strokes overview of the likely canon rather than specifics from alternate what-ifs. So until the next video, thanks again, and I've been Rick, goodbye.